Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Yema Superman Tourbillon CM.31 limited edition. This watch is available from Yema.com for €12,000. Yema have a rich brand heritage. They were founded in Bezel, France in 1948 and they're currently based in Mortain, France. The original Superman was released in 1963 and it is Yema's most iconic piece. This version of the Superman, the Tourbillon CM.31 limited edition, is a limited edition of 100 numbered pieces. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So the watch comes in a solid wooden watch box, which is housed inside this outer black cardboard box. On the lid we have the Yema emblem, Yema logo, and also it says manufacturer with a French tricolour. Manufacturer refers to Yema becoming a manufacturer, and that means they're now capable of producing their own in-house calibers in Mortain, France, rather than buying in movements from manufacturers such as ETA and Sellita respectively. So one removes the lid, pulls down the flap, and inside the solid wooden watch box is protected by black fabric, which does a good job of protecting it in shipping from any damage. So I'll take out the watch box and show it to you. Solid wooden watch box, brown grain finish, matte finish to it, and high quality printing. On the top of the hinge lid we have the Yema emblem, Yema logo, manufacturer, and the French tricolour. Nice matte finish to it, and on the front we have an embossed Yema brand emblem with a matte speed blasted background, and very nicely finished solid wooden watch box, bevels on the reverse to give adequate clearance for the hinge lid. Good attention to detail because the base is also lined with felt fabric. Purpose of the felt is it prevents the solid wooden watch box moving around on a desktop or tabletop which is polished or lacquered and scuffing and scratching it. So one opens the hinge lid. The interior is fully upholstered with contrasting cream velour fabric to a good standard, Yema emblem, Yema manufacturer on the underside of the hinge lid. Base is also fully upholstered, removable panel, and on the left and the right hand flanks of the removable panel in the base we have fabric pulls which are embroidered with the French tricolour colours of the flag, and also there's a padded pillow cushion which sits in the cutout. And this is also upholstered to a good standard with contrasting cream fabric to a good standard, as is the cutout of the base, as you can see. So you can get good purchase with your index finger and thumbs to facilitate easily withdrawing this panel from the base. Very nicely upholstered, and also even the base is fully upholstered. There's a recessed cutout which houses the warranty card and the owner's instruction manual, which I'll show you. So good presentation. Immediately one gets the impression that the Yema Superman Tourbillon CM.31 limited edition is a high quality, high tier piece made in Mortain, France. With regards to the items that come with the piece, it also comes with this aluminium metal warranty card which says 5 ans, which is 5 years. And on the reverse it details their website for contacting customer services for a warranty claim, support.yema.com, and excellent to see 5 years of international warranty, which of course is the industry standard for high tier pieces at €10,000+ price point. And lastly, one also gets this owner's instruction manual, clear concise diagrams. The instructions are in English and it's also bilingual. It's in French and English, and it details the operation of the movement used, which is the Yema Caliber Manufacture Morteau 31 Tourbillon. And Yema Caliber Manufacture Morteau 31 is abbreviated to CM31. This is an excellent owner's instruction manual. So with regards to the specifications of the piece, we have a 43mm case diameter. We have a lug-to-lug measurement of 50mm, a thickness of 13.5mm, and a lug width of 22mm. The fish scale bracelet is made from grade 5 titanium, and it tapers from 22mm at the lugs down to 17.8mm at the 2-button push micro adjustment clasp. The clasp is also made from grade 5 titanium, engraved with high definition engraving with a Yema brand emblem, and also there are 2-button push triggers on the lower portion, and that deploys the extension which I'll show you for on-the-fly adjustment. So, head of the piece is made from grade 5 titanium, coin edge bezel is grade 5 titanium, crown is also grade 5 titanium, as is the bracelet and clasp. With regards to the rest of the specification, we have a boxed top hat double dome sapphire crystal with clear AR coating on the underside, and the clear anti-reflective coating does an outstanding job of reducing the glare and the highly reflective nature of the silver mirror polished handset, and also the silver mirror polished applied indices. We have a matte textured black dial. Now, subjectively I'm going to be critical of this because I think with the domed ceramic bezel insert, which has a glossy finish rather like enamel black, the dial would have looked better. It would have complemented the glossy black ceramic bezel insert if it were also glossy enamel black. Because what we have here is a clash in finishes. We've got a glossy black bezel, but we've got a matte textured black dial, and the dial looks more charcoal grey than the deep black of the bezel. If this were glossy enamel black on the dial, of course it would complement the glossy black finish to the ceramic. Also, I think they've missed an opportunity here because the bezel is made from ceramic. They have inlaid the Lume pip with BGW9, which matches the applied indices and the handset, but however, they've missed an opportunity. They could have used a domed sapphire bezel insert, and therefore it would have looked like the Blancpain 50 Fathoms, and they could have inlaid it with BGW9 on the underside, and of course that would have looked like a vintage aesthetic of a Bakelite bezel. Bakelite bezels were used on Yema pieces such as the Navy Graph and also the Superman in the 1960s, and of course the negative of Bakelite is it was prone to being scuffed and scratched, rather like acrylic, but of course sapphire crystal bezel inserts give the aesthetic of Bakelite's 1960s look, but of course they're harder and more scratch resistant as per ceramic. The ceramic is well executed, but I just think there's a clash. So on a positive note, the benefit of it being a matte textured black dial versus glossy enamel black dial or sunray dial is that it doesn't reflect. So the legibility is good, clarity is good, and one can clearly read the time and also the tourbillon, which has a second hand mounted on it. Proportions of the applied indices are correct, and they look visually very similar to the original 1963 Superman, which this is descended from. It's a direct descendant of it. So I like the perfect symmetry of the dial with the absence of a date complication, and I like the tourbillon being enlarged and sighted at the 6 o'clock position. There's also a 60-second scale in white with black second ticks around the circumference of the tourbillon, and also we've got a black hand which the tip of is lumed with BGW9, and that means it's easy to read the seconds. So just bear with me, I'm going to move the shovel minutes hand, which is also an iconic aspect of Yema Superman pieces, out of the way, and you'll be able to see the tourbillon and the 60-second hand better. So as you can see, BGW9 tip to the tourbillon second hand is clearly legible, and it's the correct proportion because it registers on the white circle second ring around the tourbillon and also the black second ticks. So easy to look at the seconds. However, this does not hack, which I'll show you when I test the movement. With regards to the rest of the specification, we have a solid grade 5 titanium coin edge bezel, and it's correctly proportioned, low profile coin edge finishing and a large deep undercut to it, which gives it a vintage aesthetic as per 1963 Superman pieces, and I really like it because visually it does look similar in terms of proportion to other Superman pieces, but of course it doesn't have the iconic bezel lock, and that was an iconic aspect of the original Superman from 1963 and contemporary Superman pieces such as heritage reissues of the Superman. It was a unique feature of Yema pieces such as the Superman. It had a crown lock, and when you unscrewed the crown you could undo the crown lock and allow the bezel to rotate, and then what you did was you screwed back down the crown, and that's close the lock back onto the coin edge teeth on the bezel to lock the bezel into position. It's a shame that they didn't retain that because it is an iconic aspect of the Yema Superman, and it would give it its pure lineage of the original from 1963, but I appreciate that this is different because the case is of course 43mm versus the original 39mm size of the standard Superman. But nonetheless, I think it would have looked better with a crown lock. Purist Yema Superman collectors would have appreciated that continuity of design through the lineage, but of course it comes down to heritage and also whether you prefer a more contemporary look with the absence of the crown lock. So bezel is grade 5 titanium, excellent finishing, nice large chamfer on the top edge of the coin edge teeth. That deletes the sharp tips of the coin edge teeth. The coin edge finishing is good, it's high definition. It's grippy and tactile, easy to get good purchase with your index finger and thumb, but not sharp, it doesn't dig into the skin, so it's good. Case is grade 5 titanium, longitudinal brushed satin finishing to the top of the curved lugs, correct profiling because it blends very nicely into the fish scale bracelet, which is also matte brushed satin finished rather than being mirror polished. The grade 5 titanium is harder to work with than 316L grade stainless steel, which is used in standard Superman pieces, but credit where credit's due. They've done a very good job of it because the longitudinal brushed satin finishing on the flanks is done to a very fine grained finish, and it is difficult to attain that with grade 5 titanium. It is a harder material to work with. It's harder to brush satin finish to the same level of finishing as 316L grade stainless steel, but they have done it. It's got a beautiful luster to it, but in terms of luster, the head of the piece, the bezel, and the bracelet and clasp have a more grey finish rather than the silver finish of 316L, so you can tell the difference. What I like about it is the transitions. There's a nice crisp large bevel which runs the full length of the case, and the bevel marks the transition between the top of the curved lugs and the flanks of the case. And what they've done is they've mirror polished it. It's got a nice deep bevel. Aesthetically, it looks very pleasing, but also it deletes the sharp edge on the transition of the case, and I like the way it flows nicely down the full length of the flanks and curves into the curved lug. So they've done a very good job of mirror polishing it, because again, very hard to attain that kind of crisp edge on grade 5 titanium. It is harder to polish and machine versus 316L. What I like about the end links is the fish scale profiling to the end links perfectly blends into the curvature of the grade 5 titanium head of the piece. They've done a very good job. The negative to the fish scale bracelet is it doesn't articulate and pivot as well as female pivoted end links and of course other Yema bracelets, but aesthetically it is very aesthetically pleasing. Fish scale bracelets were used on the original Superman from 1963, so it's nice to have that heritage and that lineage from the original. Quality of the brush satin finishing to the grade 5 titanium fish scale bracelet is outstanding. Top side, underside and flanks have flawless brush satin finishing, and they've made the correct decision by not using mirror polishing on the flanks of the bracelet, because that of course would clash with the flanks to the head of the piece. So let's test the bezel execution. 120 click unidirectional bezel, as one would expect. Nice loud audible clicks, I like the sound of it. Often with grade 5 titanium bezels, they sound hollow and tinny because, of course, they're not as dense as the more dense material 316L grade stainless steel used with solid bezels. But this one doesn't sound hollow, it doesn't sound tinny. It feels and sounds very much like a 316L grade stainless steel bezel, so they deserve credit for using a good thickness of grade 5 titanium for the bezel. So it doesn't sound light and tinny, actually sounds solid. Nice pleasant sound to it, doesn't feel rough or gritty, doesn't feel too stiff. In terms of resistance, feels lighter than a Steinhardt Ocean 139, which is very firm, very stiff, I would say too stiff. Feels very similar in resistance to a Rolex Submariner date, such as my Starbucks. It's got that medium resistance to it, so it doesn't feel too light or too heavy, feels balanced. I like the way it feels smooth, it doesn't feel rough or gritty, and it feels even all the way through the 360 degrees of rotation. They deserve credit here, because often with grade 5 titanium bezels, when the underside of the bezel is engraved with 120 grooves and the click spring engages with the grooves, the grade 5 titanium has less density than 316L grade stainless steel, and when the click spring engages, the clicking sound makes a tinny sound to it. It doesn't sound as heavy and dull as solid 316L grade stainless steel, which is more dense. This one does sound similar to stainless steel, so it actually sounds good. It's a pleasant surprise. No lateral side-to-side play whatsoever, no back play whatsoever. So although it's medium rather than being too stiff or firm as per a Steinhardt Ocean 139, they've got the balance correct. I like that it's firm, but not too stiff. Let's just check the alignments. I'll bring up the Lume pip and triangle to 12 o'clock. One more click. Perfect. Bang on the centre of the 12 o'clock applied triangle index and bang on the centre of the 60-minute tick on the chapter ring. So this is excellent bezel execution. Even through the 360 degrees rotation, no lateral side-to-side play, no back play, perfect alignment. This is outstanding. Build quality, quality control, materials and finishing. It's just a shame that they didn't use a fully loomed sapphire bezel insert as per the Blancpain 50 fathoms. That would look better, more aesthetically pleasing than the ceramic bezel insert. And of course, the hour markers and the Arabic numerals 10, 20, 30, 40 and 50, they look dull, they look grey versus white, which would have been better if it were sapphire crystal inlaid with BGW9. Well, bezel execution is good. Let's test the screw down crown execution. Solid grade 5 titanium crown, coin edge finished, nice large chamfer which deletes the sharp tips to the coin edge teeth, and matte bead blasted background to it, and you can see it's embossed with the Yema emblem to a good standard, which is mirror polished. Correctly proportioned, large enough to be grippy and tactile, but it doesn't project too far proud of the right hand flank of the grade 5 titanium case. So easy to get good purchase with your index finger and thumb. Let's test the execution. 200 meters of hermetic seal, silky smooth. Perfect interface between the internal thread of the grade 5 titanium crown and the external thread of the grade 5 titanium crown tube. 200 meters is strong specification and it's perfectly acceptable. And feels silky smooth, sublime screw down crown execution. Minimal number of turns required to unscrew it. Excellent build quality, quality control, materials and finishing are there. So There's no date complication, therefore the benefit is there is no phantom date setting position, only one click on the crown. When you pull it out to the first click position, it's the final click, it's the time setting position. Now, as you can see, there is one negative subjectively I want you to be mindful of. This tourbillon does not hack. If you look at the tourbillon, you can see it has a second hand on it, but when you're in the time setting position, like so, you can see the second hand on the tourbillon continues to run, and it sweeps around at the characteristic 3 Hz sweep because it runs at 21,600 vibrations per hour. This is something to be mindful of because it means that you cannot set the time precisely to the second, which is a shame because it is very accurate at -3 to +7 seconds per day. So this does not hack, and that is the one negative of the caliber manufacturer CMM.31, or abbreviated to CMM.31 tourbillon. You cannot hack the tourbillon. You can see the second hand continues to sweep around at 3 Hz. So not possible to set the time precisely to the second. That's the point I'm making. But in the time setting position, feels smooth when you cycle through the 12 hours, both clockwise and anti-clockwise. The shovel hand on the minute hand is an iconic design aspect of the original Superman from 1963. So I really like that they've retained that, and it's mirror polished with bevels rather than just being flat. And then we've got a pointed arrowhead hour hand, which is correctly proportioned. The hour hand tip extends to the applied indices, which is good, and the tip of the shovel minute hand extends all the way to the white minute ticks on the chaptering. So the proportions of the handset are good, legibility is good, and you can easily differentiate between the shovel arrowhead tip to the minutes hand and the pointed arrow tip or pencil hour hand. So it's very good. Feels smooth. I like it. Lack of backplay is good. The meshing of the gearing feels nice and tight. Doesn't feel stiff, doesn't feel rough or gritty, feels perfectly smooth. When you rotate the coin edge crown, there's an almost immediate response to the minutes hand, and I like the refinement of it. It feels nice and tight, feels solid, reliable and robust for a tourbillon. Pushing it back in, it's got a nice positive click. And of course, the second hand continues to run even in the time setting position because it doesn't hack. Let's test screwing the crown back down. Instant thread pickup. There's a perfect interface between the internal thread of the coin edge crown and the external thread of the crown tube. Silky smooth. This is as smooth as the triplock crown used on my Submariner Date Starbucks, and they really deserve credit because this is outstanding silky smooth screw down crown execution. It feels sublime. Real pleasure to operate it. Now, the one thing I didn't do was test the manual winding. I'll do that now. This tourbillon has an incredible 105-hour power reserve. So to put that into perspective, it is over 4 days of power reserve. Just think about that for a moment. The industry standard for mechanical movements, which are manual wind and also automatics, is 40 hours. This has an incredible 105-hour power reserve, and it's a manual wind tourbillon versus an automatic powered by a rotor. But let's test the manual winding. So when you unscrew the crown fully, you're now in the manual wind position, and one can manually wind the CMM.31 tourbillon to its maximum 105-hour power reserve. Feels smooth, doesn't feel rough or gritty, doesn't feel stiff. In terms of smoothness, it feels very similar to manually winding an SW200-1 or a 9015, which you may be familiar with. It's got that kind of feeling to it. Doesn't feel heavy, although it does have a large barrel and of course a very large mainspring, because 105 hours does require that. But feels smooth. You can feel the tension gradually building up. Now the negative is, of course, with a very high power reserve, large barrel and large mainspring, you have to give it a lot of clockwise turns. It takes 60 clockwise turns to fully manually wind it to its maximum 105 hours. That's the negative. This does not have a rotor, therefore you cannot put it on an automatic watch winder to top it up. You can't wear it for 8 to 12 hours per day to automatically wind it. You need to manually wind it, but the benefit is you only need to do that every 4 days if you wear the piece in rotation as part of a collection, for example, because of the incredibly high 105-hour power reserve. So it feels very smooth to manually wind, feels pleasant, doesn't feel rough, doesn't feel stiff, very similar to an SW200-1, very similar to a 9015 in terms of smoothness, in terms of resistance. Doesn't feel too light, doesn't feel too heavy, feels refined. So I'll test screwing it back down again. Perfect pickups between the threads, they mate very well. Silky smooth, fantastic. Right, so let's look at the bracelet in detail. Fish scale bracelet, as per 1963 Superman, so I like that. Brushed satin finishing has a beautiful lustre to it. It does have a more dull grey finish, as per grade 5 titanium, versus the more silver finish of 316L grade stainless steel, as one would expect. Grade 5 titanium is very aesthetically pleasing when it is brushed satin finished to this fine grain finish. Now, the negative is the fish scale bracelet, and I'm just going to open it to show you. It does flex, it does articulate freely, but because of the fish scale profile to the links, it doesn't flex, it doesn't feel as fluid, it doesn't move as much as a Jubilee bracelet, an oyster bracelet, a beads of rice bracelet, or a flat link bracelet. It is flexible. The benefit is it doesn't pull arm hairs. No sharp edge to the top edge or the lower edge of the flank, so the machining, the finishing is excellent. Brushed satin finishing is good. It's very comfortable, but not as flexible as a Jubilee or oyster bracelet. That's something to be mindful of. The other negative subjectively is the fish scale profiles to the end links mean it doesn't articulate as much as female pitted end links, for example, and they are beneficial because they give a better fit. But it does articulate enough to give a good fit. Let's check the play. Now, unfortunately, we do have excess longitudinal, lateral, side to side and up and down play. If this were below €500, if it were a low tier piece between €0 and €500, or even a mid tier piece between €500 and €5,000, one could be magnanimous about it. But this is a high tier piece. So to remind you, high tier is €10,000 plus price point. And at €12,000, it's clearly well within the high tier. This is wholly unacceptable. Now, I appreciate this is a pre-production prototype. It's not a production model of the 100 numbered pieces. The serial number is engraved as XXXS. Sorry, XXXX. But nonetheless, even though this is a pre-production prototype, they really need to tighten up the tolerances to interference friction fit. This amount of play, lateral side-to-side play, up and down play, longitudinal play, play in every single direction, as you can see, it's significant. It's unacceptable on a €12,000 high tier piece. They need to tighten up the tolerances. Now, on a positive note, the bracelet isn't sloppy. The fish scale bracelet links do feel tight enough because the positive is they've made the correct decision by using 1.2mm screw pins, which are grade 5 titanium, versus using push pins and collars, which would have been a production cost-cutting measure. So I'm pleased to see screw pins, and of course the benefit is you can tighten up the tolerances better with screw pins. It's not a sloppy bracelet. The fish scale links do not have excess play, so it doesn't rattle, doesn't pull arm hairs, and it does articulate freely, although not as much, as you can see. It doesn't flex as much. It doesn't articulate as much as a Jubilee, oyster, or beads of rice or flat link bracelet. That's just a characteristic of fish scale bracelets, as you can see. But my concern is the long-term durability of the end links. Now, let's check the other side for continuity. Again, articulates not as much as female pitted end links, but rather like male end links. It's okay. But again, we have that problem. If you look at the center fish scale links in the end link, the problem is the spring bar going through the fish scale links. The hole is too large diameter and the spring bar is undersized in diameter, and therefore rather than having a friction interference fit, what we have is this sloppy fit. And it's lateral side to side, up and down, longitudinal, play in every single direction. It's significant, and of course it rattles, it's sloppy. They could easily tighten this up simply by making the hole smaller diameter and also enlarging the diameter of the spring bar, and that would increase the interference friction fit. So very easy to correct with grade 5 titanium and a stainless steel spring bar going through it. You simply make the hole smaller diameter and you make the spring bar larger diameter, and that tightens it up because, as you can see, as it stands, too much play. Bracelet is good, it's not sloppy, there's not excess play, feels good for a fish link bracelet, and of course 1.2mm screw pins are beneficial. Flows nicely, articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, but doesn't articulate as much as the other aforementioned bracelets. Doesn't pull arm hairs, no sharp edge to the top edge or the low edge. I do like the vintage aesthetic of it, as per 1963 Yema Superman. Now, let's look at the clasp in detail. So, micro adjustment clasp is new for the Superman. This has been updated, which is beneficial. The standard Superman doesn't have a micro adjustment clasp, it simply has a flip lock clasp, so this is a notable upgrade. 2 button push triggers, beautiful lustre to the grade 5 titanium, engraved with high definition engraving with a Yema emblem, which is good. No sharp edges to the top edge or the low edge. The four corners have been deburred. Nice large bevels, which mark the transition between the flanks and the body. And they've brush satin finished the bevels, which gives it a tool watch aesthetic. No sharp edge to the undercuts to the flanks, which is good. Quality of the finishing, in terms of the brush satin finishing, has a beautiful lustre, but it's more dull and grey because it's grade 5 titanium versus 316L grade. 2 button push triggers are heavily sprung loaded, feel reliable and robust. No sharp edges, opens freely. But, however, we have a glaring error, which is embarrassing for a €12,000 high-tier piece. Now, they've engraved, with high-definition engraving, Yema's logo, Manufacture Français, and Fondé en 1948, which means founded 1948, Manufacture Français means made in France, and of course Yema logo. That's all good. Problem is, it's upside down. And I'll clarify why I say it's upside down. The majority of collectors wear a watch on their left wrist, like so, with a crown on the right hand side, and then you take the watch off the wrist, like so, and you rotate it this way up. Then you open the clasp from left to right. So you press the 2 button push triggers with your right hand, index finger and thumb, from left to right. That's the way it opens if you're a left-handed collector wearing the piece on your left wrist. Now, if you look at the orientation of the engraving, you can see it's all upside down, both on the left and the right hand portion. They simply need to invert it. And this is the kind of glaring error which is embarrassing. Now, again, if this were a low-tier piece made in China, one could be magnanimous about this fundamental error. We're looking at a made in France piece, and this is high tier, €12,000, and they're not getting the basics correct because, as you can see, it's upside down. Yema, Manufacture Français, Fondé en 1948. It should be the other way up. If you're left-handed and you wear the watch on your left wrist, which of course the majority of collectors do, they open the clasp from left to right, like this. So of course the engraving should be the right way up, but you can see Yem is upside down. This is embarrassing. Now, let's check the hinge pins. Left-hand hinge pin articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, that's the benefit, but excess play. It's sloppy. What we need to see here at €12,000 is better build quality, quality control, materials and finishing. The pin going through it isn't a friction interference fit. We've got lateral side-to-side play, longitudinal play, up and down play, play in every single direction, and it rattles. My concern with this is long-term durability, because when you have excess play like this, when you have a hole which is too large in diameter and the pin going through it is undersized in diameter, it puts the stainless steel pin under excess shear load. And the excess shear load will eventually cause the hole to elongate. It becomes ovalized. Also causes excess wear on the pin going through it. And eventually what happens is the pin weakens, it becomes fatigued, and then it shears. And of course, bracelet fails, piece drops on the ground. This is not acceptable. This does not say to me, Manufacture Français, made in France, in Mortain, France, and €12,000 build quality, quality control, materials and finishing. It's sloppy. Let's check the centre hinge pin. Articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, that's the benefit, but sloppy. Longitudinal, lateral, side to side, up and down play, play in every single direction, and it's significant. Just bear with me, I'll get the camera to focus on it and I'll show you. You can see the amount of play. If this were a low-tier Chinese-made piece, between €0 and €500, one could be magnanimous. But this is 12,000, high tier, wholly unacceptable. Finally, let's check the right-hand hinge pin, which is actually a spring bar made from stainless steel. Articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, that's the benefit, sloppy. Lateral, side to side, up and down play, play in every single direction, it clicks. Now just bear with me, I'll get the camera to focus on it. That's the level of play we're looking at, in every direction. And it clicks. Dreadful. Wholly unacceptable. So cumulative effect is, this is a sloppy grade 5 titanium solid mill clasp, as you can see, because you can now see the problem. The cumulative effect is we have left hand, centre and right hand pins with too much play. The solid mill grade 5 titanium clasp is sloppy, it rattles. My concern is long-term durability. They need to refine this. I appreciate it's a pre-production prototype, but it needs to be refined. They need to address this in the production versions of the 100 numbered pieces. Now, as I've detailed, benefits of this is it's a micro adjustment class. So the second 2 button push triggers deploy on the fly adjustment. Nice slim gauge to the grade 5 titanium, this reduces the heft of it, but you can see we've got a full 15mm of on-the-fly adjustment, which is beneficial. Let's check the micro adjustment. Heavy ratcheting mechanism, nice loud audible clicks, pushes in with nice solid clicks. I like it, feels good, feels refined. When it's fully closed up, doesn't have excess play. When it's fully deployed, does have excess play. This is the problem. This is what I dislike about it. Now you can see. Sloppy. It doesn't have side-to-side play, but it has lateral play. Now, just to clarify, you can see it wobbles. When it's fully closed up, it doesn't have that problem. So the problem isn't the tolerances. The width is correct. They've machined the inner portion correctly and the internals of the body correctly. So it doesn't feel sloppy when it's closed, but when it's on its full extension, when fully deployed 15mm, it rattles. Look at the play. This does not say to me manufacture française. This does not say to me high tier level. It does not say €12,000. Dreadful. And of course, the other problem is we have up and down play. Just bear with me, I'll get the camera to focus on it. Look at that play. Up and down play. This is €12,000 and it rattles. It's just not good enough. The truth is, there are better alternatives to this design of ratcheting micro adjustment class. Other brands are doing it better in the mid tier, between €500 and €5,000. Other brands are doing it better in the high tier for €10,000 plus price point. This is not good. You can see, sloppy. When it's deployed, it rattles laterally, and also up and down it rattles. This is just not good enough. Yes, it's good to have 15mm on-the-fly adjustment, but I prefer to see a conventional ratcheting mechanism with an internal mechanism and only 10mm. That would be adequate. 15 is good, but although it does work well, it closes up with nice ratcheting clicks, deploys smoothly, it just has too much play for my liking. So that's a negative I want to be mindful of. Right, so I'll give you wrist shots and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. So just bear with me, I'm going to remove my Concord 40. And then we'll do a wrist shot. Now, this is a pre-production prototype, and of course it's been sized for a collector with a smaller wrist. They've removed several links from the fish link bracelet, but I can, when it's fully deployed, just get it over my glove, and I can give you a wrist shot. So I'm going to do that. Now, to clarify, the standard fish scale bracelet with grade 5 titanium, it has enough links to fit up to an 8-inch wrist size. So I'm not going to be critical of this one being short and sized for a smaller wrist size of say 6 inches, because you can see when the micro adjustment clasp is fully deployed with 15mm of extension, yes, it does fit my 8-inch wrist. The standard fish scale bracelet will fit up to an 8-inch wrist without it being deployed. I want to clarify that. So to clarify, there are enough removable links on the 6 o'clock and the 12 o'clock side of the fish scale bracelet to size this down to a minimum 6-inch wrist size up to a maximum 8-inch wrist size. And even though this has been sized for a 6-inch wrist size, when it's deployed, it still fits my 8-inch wrist. So plenty of micro adjustment, which is good, and plenty of removable links on the 6 and the 12, which is good. Aggressive taper. 22mm lug width, aggressive taper down to 17.8 at the micro adjustment clasp. Now, normally I would be critical of this and I would say this would look better. If it were a 40mm, I would say it should be a 20 to 16 perfection personified taper that's often referred to. 20 to 16 is one industry standard, 22 to 18 is the alternative for larger head of the pieces. However, for a 41, 42 and 43, this is 43, 22 is the correct lug width, because if this had a fish scale bracelet and a 20 to 16 taper, it would not have enough meat on the grade 5 titanium bracelet and the clasp would not be wide enough to balance the wide 43mm head of the piece. So with a 43 case, yes, 22 is the correct choice, and a 22 to 18 taper is also correct. It's just underneath that, it's 20 to 17.8. So very close to the industry standard of 22 to 18. Point is, clasp looks wide enough, doesn't look undersized and underproportioned, and the taper is aggressive. I like it. 22 tapering down to 17.8 looks good. Clasp has enough meat, bracelet has enough meat, and I like the taper. The matte satin finishing gives it a tool watch aesthetic versus mirror polishing the fish scale centre links. Had they mirror polished the centre links, it would have looked too shiny. I like the tool watch aesthetic of brush satin finishing to the bezel, head of the piece, bracelet and clasp throughout. Also the flanks on the clasp, flanks on the bracelets are all brushed satin finish to match the flanks of the head of the piece. Now, straight away I'm going to say 43mm, as one would expect, gives wrist presence. This does dominate the wrist. However, they've made the correct decision by making it from grade 5 titanium throughout versus 316L grade stainless steel, which would have been the other option. Had they made it from grade 5 had they made this from 316L grade stainless steel, this would be in excess of 175 grams in 43mm. Far too much heft. However, pleasant surprise with this, because even though it's 43mm, it's only 109 grams, and that's the benefit of using grade 5 titanium for the bezel, the case, the bracelet and the clasp, as well as the exhibition case back. Grade 5 titanium is much lighter than 316L grade, 175 grams if it were 316L, but grade 5 it's only 109. Now it's 109, and of course they have sized it down for a 6-inch wrist, so of course with an 8-inch bracelet that will be more heft, but still it's not going to exceed 125 grams. It's well below the 150 gram sweet spot that I often refer to. So I would say to you, at 43, it does have wrist presence. If you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist, you can immediately rule this piece out because it's going to be too large for a 6 to 7 inch wrist. Other thing to note is it does have a long lug to lug of 50mm. Now, I think they've made a mistake here. They should have used the industry standard, the perfect sweet spot 48 lug to lug. This does look and feel 2mm too long. Now I appreciate it's a 43. We're not looking at a 40 or a 41 or even a 42. Yes, it is a large diameter head of the piece, and of course that's necessary to house the tourbillon because it does have a large barrel and it does have a large mainspring in order to provide the incredible 105 hours of power reserve. For example, they can't fit this tourbillon with 105 hours of power reserve inside a 39 or 40mm Superman case. It's just not viable. It's not possible technically. So it needs a 43 diameter case to house the caliber. But nonetheless, 2mm too long. Even on my large 8-inch wrist, you can see there is some slight overhang on the tips of the lugs. Even on my 8-inch wrist, it does look 2mm too long. If it were shortened to 48, this would fit 7 to 8-inch wrists better. It's still too large for a 6 to 7, so you can rule it out. Diameter is too large, also length is far too large. You're not going to be able to wear this if you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist because of the 50mm with a 2mm overhang of the case. 22, of course, visually will also look too wide on the bracelet, the lug width for a 6 to 7. Does look okay on a 7 to 8 inch wrist, but you have to bear in mind it does dominate the wrist. It's significantly larger than a 40. You can really visually feel that this is a 43. You can see it and you also feel it. Despite the lack of heft, it's only 109 grams. The thing I like about it is, and it's a pleasant surprise, is the lack of thickness. This is only 13.5. Now bear in mind, it does have a box top hat crystal, which does add 2mm of thickness. I think they've made an error here. They could have used a flat sapphire crystal to reduce this by 2mm. That could have slimmed it down to only 11.5, which would have been fantastic. The cannon pinion, because it only has 2 hands on it, the hour and the minute hand, it doesn't need excess clearance. A flat sapphire crystal would have provided enough clearance above the minutes hand on the top of the cannon pinion, because the second hand isn't on the cannon pinion, it's mounted on the tourbillon. Alternatively, they could have used a very low dome, double dome sapphire crystal and reduced it by 1mm. That would have slimmed it down to 12.5. It's 13.5, but it's subjective because some collectors might argue, well, it does give the piece a vintage aesthetic. As per a 1963 Superman, it looks like an acrylic, plexiglass or Hesselite domed crystal. But of course, one doesn't get the negative distortion effect of a thick acrylic crystal used in the 1960s. The benefits of using a double domed box top hat crystal is it's curved on the underside, curved on the top side. Often the acrylic crystals were flat on the underside and very thick, and of course then when you tilted the piece at an oblique angle you got a magnification and distortion effect. Clarity is good, but does add 2mm of thickness. I think a lower profile double dome sapphire crystal versus this top hat profile would have looked better, and much better if it had a flat profile. However, one could argue that it has a domed ceramic bezel insert versus a flat profile, rather like the Blancpain 50 Fathoms curved domed bezel, but that's sapphire crystal. And of course, the box top hat crystal does complement the dome of this ceramic bezel insert, so it does give the piece a vintage aesthetic. But it is large. 43, you can really see the wrist presence and you can also feel it. but of course it is necessary, it's mandatory when you have a large tourbillon caliber such as this CMM.31, which has 105 hours. It does have a large barrel, does have a large mainspring. It technically isn't possible to fit it in a smaller 39, 40 or even 41 case. It needs a 43. That's the negative. 13.5 is good. It's just marginally above the 13 sweet spot, so it will slip underneath a shirt cuff, although not as easily as a 13 or below. So it is practical for a daily wear piece, but I would say definitely only suitable for a larger 7 to 8 inch wrist and ideally 8 inches plus. Right, so let's do a lume test. Now, just bear with me. I'm going to put back on my Concord 40 before we continue. So, this has BGW9 on the lume pip, on the ceramic bezel inserts, the handset, and also the applied indices. So, as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, it has not disappointed. And pleasant surprise, they've also fully lumed the second ring around the tourbillon. And just bear with me, I'm going to actually move the arrowhead shovel minute hand out of the way so you can see the tourbillon better. Now, the tip of the second hand, which is mounted on the tourbillon, is also lumed with BGW9, and it registers on the scale or the circle 60-second ticks around the tourbillon, which is good. I wasn't expecting the white ring around the tourbillon to be lumed. However, we can clearly see a difference in the number of layers, the application. 5 to 6 layers on the lume pip on the ceramic bezel insert is good. 5 to 6 layers on the applied indices is good. 5 to 6 layers on the hour and minute hand. That's good. However, you can see the potency of the exciter on the ring or second ticks. You can see on the ring around the tourbillon, it's not 5 to 6. I think we're looking at 3 to 4 layers maximum, because you can see it's now fading quicker. Potency of the exciter around the 60-second ring around the tourbillon is not glowing as brightly. I'm just going to charge this up again. You can see they have fully lumed it. Now, I think they've missed an opportunity here, as I've detailed. Had they used a sapphire bezel insert, they could have engraved the underside of it and inlaid it with 5 to 6 layers of BGW9. A fully lumed sapphire bezel insert would have looked more like a Blancpain 50 Fathoms sapphire bezel insert, far more aesthetically pleasing. Because the truth is, the hour markers and the 10, 20, 30 and 40 and 50 Arabic numerals, they're dull, they're very grey, they're not white on the ceramic bezel insert. So in daylights it's not as aesthetically pleasing and not as easy to read, the ceramic bezel insert. If they'd used a fully lumed sapphire bezel insert, it would have looked better in daylight, and of course it would have glowed in the dark, because we only have this lume pip. Can you imagine the benefit of a fully lumed sapphire bezel insert as per the Blancpain 50 Fathoms? Far better. And at €12,000 one has to expect that kind of specification rather than just a lume pip. But nonetheless, proportions of the indices are good, proportions of the hands are good. You can easily differentiate between the shorter pencil hour hand and the larger, longer shovel arrowhead tip with a bar across it on the minute hand. So it's easy to read the time in the dark. I do like the fact the tourbillon scale for the 60 seconds is lumed, but they needed to apply 5 to 6 layers on the tip of the second hand mounted on the tourbillon, because you can see it just lacks the potency. The exciter isn't as bright as on the indices and the handset. So the tourbillon hand, the second hand on the tourbillon, needs to either be fully lumed, not just the tip of it, and also they need to apply 5 to 6. I think we're looking at 2 to 3 layers on the second hand and 3 to 4 layers on the 60-second ring. So you can see what I'm talking about. They have fully lumed the tip of the tourbillon second hand. You can see it moving around the 60-second scale around the tourbillon. But I think we're looking at 2 to 3 layers on the second hand and 3 to 4 layers on the ring around the tourbillon. So I'll just charge it up once more. You can see the tip of the second hand just doesn't have that potency of the ring around it. You can read it, but it's not as bright. I think what they should have done was fully lumed the hand rather than just the tip of it, because they've made the hand black, and then what they've done is they've lumed the tip. But you can see the tip only looks like it's got 2 to 3. It's fading very quickly. I think the ring around it has 3 to 4, but the hands and the indices and the lume pip on the bezel insert, they're 5 to 6. There's room for improvement with regards to the tourbillon, but the dial and the hands are good, and the lume pip is good. But the problem with the tourbillon scale and the hand on it, it doesn't say to me €12,000, and really one cannot be magnanimous about production cost cutting measures at this price point in the high tier. We're not looking at a mid tier piece between 500 and 5,000. We're looking at a high tier piece above 10,000. 12,000 is well within the high tier. So let's discuss the movement used because it's my favourite aspect of the piece. So as I've detailed, this is powered by the Yema caliber manufacturer CMM.31, which they've abbreviated to CMM.31. The CMM.31 Tourbillon is based upon the architecture of its predecessor, the CMM.30. So exactly the same specifications, but however, the notable difference is the finishing has improved. They've now polished the bevels. So the quality of the bevels on the movement are done to a higher level. The movement itself is polished and finished to a higher level than the CMM.30, which was its predecessor. So the CMM.31 is identical in terms of architecture, but the finishing is done to a better level. The exhibition case back is glazed with sapphire crystal, and around the circumference is grade 5 titanium, and it's engraved with Titan, grade 5, which denotes titanium in French, France, and also it has the serial number. Now, this is a pre-production prototype, so it says XXX XXX, because this is one of 100 numbered limited edition pieces, but as this is a prototype, they've used X's rather than the serial number. But the thing I like about it is the grade 5 titanium portion is low profile, sapphire crystal glazing is large diameter, so it fully displays the tourbillon, which is good, and it's embossed with Yema caliber manufacturer CMM.31, and it's mirror polished on the embossed sections to a very high standard, and the bevels are mirror polished to a better standard than on its predecessor, the CMM.30. So it's good finishing to it. I like the matte be blasted background to it. Quality of the embossing on the gear is very good. It says limited edition, and I like it. The quality of the finishing is good. They have definitely refined it. It is a level above its predecessor, the CMM.31 Tourbillon. Now, with regards to specification, it has 19 joules. It runs at 21,600 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 3 Hz. Has hand winding, of course, because it's not an automatic with a rotor. Negative is it does not hack. So, as I've demonstrated, in a time setting position, you cannot hack the tourbillon to set the time precisely to the second. 105-hour power reserve is incredible. Over 4 days of power reserve, that's the main benefit. It's regulated in 6 positions to accuracy of -3 to +7 seconds per day. The other thing I like about it is it's anti-magnetic and also shock resistant. It's anti-magnetic to 2000 Gauss, which is good for a tourbillon, and also it's shock resistant to 5 Gs, which is very strong specification. The sapphire crystal glazed exhibition caseback provides an effective hermetic seal to 200 meters, which is acceptable. Now, with regards to the end links, they are a good tight fit to the head of the piece, but I think it could be improved if they use quick release stainless steel spring bars versus standard stainless steel spring bars. That would negate the need for a spring bar tool. The reason why I say that is with a titanium case and titanium bracelet, of course it's prone to being scuffed and scratched by a spring bar tool if you slip off the spring bar with a spring bar tool. It would really benefit if they use quick release levers, because that would negate the need for a spring bar tool. But underside to the grade 5 titanium case is concentric CNC lathe tool machine to a good standard, nice large bevels to the undercuts to the flanks, and the 4 tips of the lugs have been beveled, so no sharp corners. It's well finished. What I like about the exhibition caseback is displays the caliber well, nice and flat, low profile, feels smooth and comfortable against the wrist because the sapphire crystal is perfectly flat. It's not a deep bubble back caseback. That's the benefit of this tourbillon, the CMM.31, being manual wind rather than automatic with a rotor. One doesn't need to provide clearance for a rotor. The negative is, of course, you can't automatically wind it on wrist 8 to 12 hours per day or with an automatic watch winder. But benefit is slims the piece down to only 13.5, even though it has an exhibition case back and also a box top hat double dome sapphire crystal. So movement is well decorated. I like the mirror polishing to it. I like the improvement on the bevels versus its predecessor, the CMM.30. CMM.31 is definitely finished to a higher standard. 105 hours is excellent. Now, when this one is fully wound to its maximum 105 hours, which is incredible, it is well within the -3 to +7 seconds per day. This one is running consistently at +5 seconds per day. Often with high power reserve movements, for example, with 105 hours, one has to sacrifice accuracy. One isn't going to attain chronometer accuracy. But I want to give due credit to Yema here with their in-house calibers, because this one is -3 to +7. And when it's at 105 hours, it is consistently running to +5 seconds, which is well within the stated -3 to +7. So it is accurate, chronometer accurate, but still 105 hours, which is 4 days plus. So excellent movement, technically excellent and better finished. Right, so last I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch meet 2 criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price points. I'm going to declare it good value and good quality. Now, I'm not going to say excellent quality and excellent value. Why is that? Well, main reason is, as I've detailed, too much play in the end links. This is not €12,000 build quality level, materials and finishing. This needs to be tightened up. It's sloppy. And this is wholly unacceptable for 12,000. It downgrades it from excellent quality and excellent value down to good quality and good value. The other problem is, as I've detailed, is the bezel. They've missed an opportunity. At €12,000, this should be a fully loomed sapphire bezel insert as per the Blancpain 50 fathoms. Now, one could be magnanimous if this were a low tier piece between 0 and 500 or a mid tier piece between 500 and 5,000. But this is a high tier piece at 10,000 plus. 12,000 is well within the high tier. Therefore, it is mandatory to have a fully loomed sapphire bezel insert, or alternatively, mandatory to have a fully loomed ceramic bezel insert at €12,000. Ceramic bezel insert without lume is just not good enough, and it's a clear production cost cutting measure, and I think a production cost cutting measure too far in order to maximise profit margin per piece. At €12,000, this really should have sapphire crystal with BGW9 throughout, rather than just the cost cutting measure of the lume pip only. Around the tourbillon, the 60-second scale, the ring needs to have 5 to 6 layers versus 3 to 4. The second hand on the tourbillon is only 2 to 3, needs to have 5 to 6. So they need to improve this in the production models. These are the kind of shortcomings that are wholly unacceptable at €12,000 price point. Yes, it's impressive to see a tourbillon with 105 hours. Yes, it's impressive to see grade 5 titanium used throughout. And of course, we do have the benefits of the update to the clasp. Rather than the standard Yema clasp with a flip lock, we've now got a micro adjustment clasp with 15mm of on-the-fly adjustment. But too much play, as you can see. Just bear with me. Too much play up and down. Too much play side to side, lateral play. This does not say to me €12,000 of build quality, quality control, materials and finishing. Yes, it's grade 5 titanium. One has to appreciate that's expensive versus 316L grade stainless steel. But these are the fundamentals Yema needs to be getting correct at €12,000 to be considered a rival to their competitors. So, tourbillon movement is excellent. That does justify the piece. However, even though it has 105 hours and it is accurate to -3 to +7, it doesn't forgive. One cannot be magnanimous about sloppy play in the end links like this, play in the ratcheting clasp, the micro adjustment, and of course the lack of 5 to 6 layers around the tourbillon for the 60-second scale, the lack of 5 to 6 layers on the second hand on the tourbillon. I'd like to see a V2 version of this, or alternatively I'd like to simply see the 100 limited edition numbered versions to have enhancements, because as it stands, this is only a maximum of good quality and good value. I cannot declare it excellent quality and excellent value despite the in-house calibre, which is stellar. So I'm going to recommend it to you for consideration, but bear in mind the shortcomings. I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Yema Superman Tourbillon CMM.31 limited edition. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.